Was there a time, a specific time where you made a switch, if not in the performing, at least in your thinking, that, okay, maybe what I originally hoped for, that killer hit, ain't gonna happen, let's move on? Was there a particular time, or did it just more slowly evolve to something else?
Well, you know, it's kind of in a rock and a hard place because in the beginning, all you try to do is write hit songs. That's how you get record deals. And then I have probably the most iconic record president of all time saying, "Don't try to write a hit, just write what you feel." So that's what I was doing, and that was making us successful at what we did. But in the end, did not translate to being accepted by the masses as a hit-sounding band.
And then did you decide to do something different, or how did you move from that phase to the next one?
Well, you know, we went out and toured again. We went out with, we played with Seals and Crofts was a great band to play with. We added a keyboard player, Brent Midland, played with us a couple of years later. But we just toured and toured and toured, and finally, there was a lot of frustration between Mark and myself. You know, again, when I went to Vegas, I wanted to be a solo act. That's really what I because I can do it by myself. I love doing it by myself. You don't have to worry about, is the other person prepared? Are they going to be rehearsed? Are they going to come sober? You know, whatever. So Mark and I had some issues, and you know, there were drugs involved that I just couldn't deal with, and so we stopped for a while. This was '73. I decided just to kind of take a break. It wasn't any kind of finale thing. I just said, I think we need to stop. I didn't feel any inspiration to write, because when you go from this euphoria of, oh my God, this is, you know, I'm in Pollyanna land. This is like everything is great, to the point where you're somewhat disappointed. There's some bitterness between, you know, and I can't equate it to a marriage, because you know, I've been married since '73, so we never had that thing. But I'm assuming that's what it must feel like to get to the point where you think, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think it has to stop. So we stopped, and so you know, again, I kept playing, and I met Roger Birnbaum and Kip Cohen at A&M. I've written all these new songs, and I went over there to play for them. And Kip Cohen was the A&R guy there. Roger was kind of a secondary guy too. He's also A&R, but he wasn't the head guy. Kip Cohen was. And he said, well, you know, I'd like to see this with a band, because I really like your songs. I like, you know, obviously. So he says, let's put a band together. I want it to be a band, and we'll do something at the Troubadour. We'll do a showcase. So I got some guys together, put together a band, and did the showcase, and didn't go nearly as well as I'd hoped. The band sounded great, but Kip Cohen said, well, this doesn't sound like a band to me. This sounds like you and three sidemen. And I go, well, it kind of is. I mean, these guys don't sing, they don't write. So that kind of stifled the progression of the deal, which I thought maybe I'd get a deal with A&M. So luckily, Roger Birnbaum really liked me, liked what I did. And so he got involved he says, you know, why don't we try to, you know, match you up with somebody? So there were some guys, there was a band called Bateau that were brothers, and they had split up. He tried to match me up with one of the guys, and then there was a couple other people he tried to match me up with, and none of it really worked. You know, it's like kind of going on this blind date, and it's like, you know, it's just, not that they weren't great, it just wasn't great, wasn't going to be great for me. So here we are, 1974, and my brother-in-law, Steve, is talking to Roger Birnbaum and says, do you think John would consider doing a record with Mark again? And so Steve asked me, and I go, well, I don't know what Mark's up to. So, I got together with Mark because nothing else was working out. And I wasn't going to get a solo deal. So Mark had been writing some songs, and I really encouraged him to carry that weight. It would be great if I sang half the songs. I had to write half the songs because it's a lot of pressure. Not complaining, but it's a lot of pressure to be the guy that writes the songs, that does the arrangements, that sings every one of the songs, teaches everybody the harmonies and stuff. It would be great if Mark could take that role and just make it more of a, I never considered Mark to be an unequal partner. I thought that what he did was just as important as what I did, but he didn't think so. And so I encouraged him to write. I said, well, just write, and we'll see what happens. So eventually we get an audition for Clive Davis, who's taken over Bell Records, and they're going to call it Arista. So here we are again at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and now we're playing for Clive. So we play for Clive. He loves us. He wants to sign us. And we said, great. So we found a producer, Tom Sellers, and so we made this record. And the relationship with Clive was not nearly the one we'd had with Ahmet and David Geffen. They were guys that found acts that they really liked and just kind of pushed them ahead, not try to change them, not try to make them, whatever. Clive wasn't like that. He's a very hands-on guy, wants total control, and he came to see us at a place called My Father's Place in New York, at Roslyn, on Long Island. And it was a great club. And this was like the last gig of our tour. We'd already been cutting the record. And so we go there and we get 2 standing ovations. We get 2 encores. And we think, Clive's here, he's going to just die. Here are the guys he just signed, got a new record coming out. And these people are just going absolutely nuts. So he comes downstairs and says to me, well, you guys were lucky that there was an instrumental audience here tonight because you played too many instrumental jam things. I'm saying, did he ever hear the first 2 records? Because that's was kind of our shtick. I mean, it was kind of, we write songs and we do these jams. It was kind of our thing, and we trade solos. So as it turns out, as we're making the record, it's getting fluffier and fluffier and fluffier, and the solos are being taken out, and they're adding organ, and then they want a bunch of strings, they want some girl singers, and we're completely losing control of this record. And it was probably our biggest selling album, but it was the most disappointing one to me because it didn't really, I think there's some really good songs on the record, and plus Clive made us do some songs we didn't really want to do. That was kind of his thing. You do your 8, I give you 2. And you have to do those 2. So he gave us 2 Jim Weatherly songs. One was You Are a Song, which is a decent song. Another song called Gentler Time that I hated the song. Jim Weatherly's a great writer. He's written some massive hits. And this song wasn't, I couldn't see myself. Because when I sing a song, I mean, I'm trying to just, that song becomes me, and it's like I'm just really selling this, not selling it, but just selling it to the people so they can believe that when I'm singing the tune, I mean, it's coming from someplace. And I just couldn't feel that there. It was really difficult for me. So I finally did the lead vocal, and I remember being at the, we were going to go meet with Clive and just tell him that maybe this is a song that we couldn't do. And it didn't matter. So the record came out, and again, we went out and toured. We always toured. We toured everywhere. And we had Brandon the band, who was a great, great singer, great keyboard player. And so we went out, and the record was moderately successful. And it was about time to do another record. And so I was writing all the songs, and Mark was writing the songs that he wanted to play to Clive. And so it turned out that Mark's songs didn't really make the cut. But it didn't come from me, and that's how I really wanted it. I thought if his songs get picked, great. Well, the next one we come up, and here's this another, a declining part of the relationship, because now he feels that he doesn't have a chance to be the writer. And I didn't care. I liked what he did. He was important. He was really important to the band. But again, he never saw that, even though I told him that. And so he became more and more reclusive. And Clive said, listen, I want to do a new record with you guys, but I have a couple of songs I want you to record. And we'll put them out, and we'll make the record. And one song was Somewhere in the Night, which was a absolutely beautiful song that Richard Kerr and Will Jennings, I think, were the writers. And it was a ballad. It was kind of, 70, 75, 76, very big ballad days. And this was a great song. And I think that he pitched it first to the artist Melanie, and then she couldn't sing the lyrics. She didn't like the lyric. It was meant more for a male singer to sing. She didn't like the big hook, which was "Come With Me," Somewhere in the Night. I mean, she just didn't like it. So he pitched it to us, because Helen Reddy had just recorded it, and she had "I Am Woman" out or some other song. And so Clive said, I want to beat her to the punch, because I know that they want to put Somewhere in the Night out. And so we cut it, and it came out great. And that was going to be a song for the new album. And so we cut that, and there was another song that he wanted us to cut, which was a song that I said, I couldn't believe that it was being considered. Sometimes I felt like maybe he was just seeing how far he could push me. But it was a song called Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang. And I said, we can't do this. So I talked to my manager and Mark, and I said, listen, we need to go tell Clive that we can't do this, right? So we need to, if we go in there and just say, listen, Somewhere in the Night we love, but Wham Bam, I can't do it. So we go to the meeting, and here I am pleading my case, right? And Mark and Rob, our manager at the time, is there. And so I'm almost in tears, saying, yeah, I've tried for two albums or 3 albums now to be this artistic guy who has credibility, and to sing Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang, it just feels stupid to me. I mean, I'm not saying the song's not going to be a hit, but just for me, it just... So I turned around to see Mark and Rob, just, for the support, and they're just kind of... I'm like, hey, thanks a lot, guys. And I was like, and that was it. Clive goes, well, this is it. You're going to have to do it. So we cut Somewhere in the Night and cut Wham Bam. And Somewhere in the Night came out. And it was really well done. It was kind of right in my power thing. And what happened was, that made it even worse for Mark, is that we cut the record, and Clive said, this sounds like a John Batdorf record. I want this to sound like a Batdorf and Rodney record. I want Mark to sing unison with you. So, okay, so we tried it. And Mark was not a lead singer. He could sing good harmony, but lead thing really wasn't his thing. So here he is, he's trying to match me, who's been a lead singer since I was 5 years old. And Clive hears it, and he hates it. So, because what happened was that Mark, because I really sang great on this. I mean, I just for some reason that song resonated with me, and I felt that song, even though I didn't write it, it felt like something I could have written, and it just worked. And so Mark sang it, and it just dragged down the performance, because he just, he did what he did great, but he couldn't do that kind of vocal. It was really high. I mean, it was really a hard vocal. And so Clive says, I really want this to sound like a duet. So he had a guy named David Pomerantz, who was an artist on Arista Records as well. And he had David come in and sing unison with me on the verses. And he was supposed to be Rodney. And he sang on the verses, which sounded, it was a decent sound, but he got to the chorus, he couldn't sing it, it was too high. But at that point, it didn't matter. It was the verse thing that Clive was worried about. So then, what does that do to Mark? So we cut that, and we cut Wham Bam, and Mark and I did the harmonies, and I remember Clive produced Wham Bam, and so Somewhere in the Night comes out, and it enters the charts at number 80. First time we wrote a record come on with 80 with a bullet, which is great for us. We'd been 130, 140. We never got that high. Well, then Helen Reddy, they were really upset that we were trying to rush the song out. So her husband, Jeff Wald, I think was his name, called all the big radio stations, and Helen Reddy was a huge star at that time. I have no idea why, but she was. And he threatened to pull her records if they played Batdorf Rodney version, not hers. So the record got, low 70s, and then it was just, because her record came out, and her record stiff too, because it just didn't, at one point, I think we were number one, like in Birmingham, Alabama, but it just, because there were two competing acts, they canceled out one another, and later became a big hit by Barry Manilow. So, we didn't know what to do. And Mark and our relationship again was going bad, and again there were issues with drugs, and I called my manager and said, listen, I can't continue like this. I can't worry about anything else other than me being an artist. I can't have to pull this ball and chain, which is what it had come to, because there was so much negativity, because of all the stuff that had happened, all the the stuff, Mark's songs didn't get picked, now his voice is being replaced, his solos are cut out. And I can imagine how devastating that was for him. So I told my manager, I said, listen, man, we're supposed to go play for Clive and play him all the new songs. I don't want to be in this duet anymore. And I want to go there and have you guys with me, so I can tell Clive that I can't do this, and explain to them why. So I go there, and Clive is trying his best to get me to do it. And I said, I just can't, man. There's going to be a time when this is going to get ruined some other way, other than just the negativity. There's going to be a performance we can't do. There's going to be whatever, fights that are missed, or shows we can't play. And so he says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, there's a guy in my band right now, Brent Midland, who's a great singer, great writer, great keyboard player. And I met this guy at a party named Greg Collier. I really liked the way he sang. He's got some really good songs. So I'd maybe like to do a band with these guys. So he says, okay, well, I'll be back here in 2 weeks. Why don't you guys come play for me in 2 weeks? So we got together and listened to all our songs, and we had a bunch of songs, and we worked on them for 2 straight weeks, and went back to the Beverly Hills Hotel for another audition, and he wanted to sign the band. And so the band didn't have a name at the time, and we ended up adding a bass player and a drummer, and eventually Bob Fiden, who was an A&R guy for Arista, wanted to call us Silver Bump something, I don't know what it was. And we said, well, how about just Silver? So the band became Silver, and we had to go back into the studio and erase Mark's vocals on Wham Bam, because the deal was Silver's now going to put out Wham Bam as a single. So we took Mark's vocals off, put Brent and Greg's vocals on there. And then we cut an album out at Indigo Ranch out in Malibu, and made the Silver record, and it was a lot of fun. We spent 2 or 3 weeks there. We just slept there. You know, played till the sun came up, slept, woke up, ate, recorded, and so the record came out, and the Wham Bam got to number 16 in the nation. It was it was just remarkable to have a single that big, but having a song that you hated to play every night. But the interesting thing is that Batdorf and Rodney were at the point where we could draw between 3,000 and 5,000 people because of our popularity on FM radio, especially colleges. We did great at colleges. And then Silver came out, and we had a hit, Wham Bam, this teeny bopper kind of song. And we played the Troubadour, and about 30 or 40 people showed up. So here we have this hit that's, I think, number 3 in LA, and nobody comes. Thinking, wow, you know, all they ever want us to do is have a hit. And now here's the hit, and nobody comes because the people that like the other band, this wasn't what they were, you know, this is not what they had expected. Although the rest of the album was really good. But this was like a bubblegum record that became a big hit. And it didn't really make the career take off. And we went out with America, so we had great tours. Doobie Brothers, we had the greatest tours. But, you know, it just never really... The second record came out and it was stiff, didn't make it. And so we were going to try a new album later, and Clive didn't like any of the songs, and eventually the band just split up. And that was kind of it. That was summer '77. Band's broken up. No idea what to do.
What'd you do?
Well, I spent a lot of soul-searching time. I couldn't get a solo record. Couldn't get a solo deal. Band broke up. I thought, well, gosh, you know, I'm still a really great singer and a really, you know, proficient guitar player. I mean, I can play really well. For me, I'm not like a great studio guy or, you know, some guy who's a massively talented guy. But if I work on the parts, I'm really good at that. And, you know, I'm like I never forget. I mean, it's always still there. So I thought, well, what can I do? If I don't have a record deal, what can I do to make money at this? Because I have a lot of talent. And so I thought, well, maybe I've been another manager, Burl Heckman, and we tried to get a solo deal. And we finally got a solo deal after I spent a couple of years as a staff songwriter in LA, and got a record by America, got a record by the Crüe sisters, Dan Seals, Kim Carnes got one of my records, it didn't come out. So we approached, I had some songs, I cut a demo, and got a deal with 20th Century Fox. They had a record label. And Neil Portnow was the president then. He wanted me to start off with a cover song. He says, if we can get this cover hit, then we'll do the album, blah, blah, blah. So we cut, one of my favorite songs when I was a kid was Be My Baby, which I found out that Brian Wilson, that was one of his favorite songs too. It was by the Ronettes, and Phil Spector produced it. It was just a great record. So I kind of cut it in more of an 80s feel, kind of the Cars were out then, and the music was kind of changing. And so we cut the single, and it came out great. And we were going to release the single. At the same time, my old manager hit me up about being in a band with these other two guys, Harry Stinson and Bill Batstone. And so we formed this trio that originally had Richie Furay in it, and he quit to become a preacher. So I had this trio going who had a deal possibly with Atlantic, and now I have my solo deal with 20th Century. And after a few years of not having much going on, this was great. So the single was going to come out on 20th, And so we called the publisher of the song and said, can you give us some help promoting this record? It's Be My Baby. They go, well, sure. And they said, what label's it on? And we said, well, 20th. So their thing was, well, didn't you hear? And which is a horrible thing to hear. We go, hear what? Says, well, they're going under. I think you need to give them a call. So I go, well, that's impossible. The record's coming out in 2 days. And it already got reviewed in the trades. And so we called 20th, and they got bought by Marvin Davis, who was a kind of an oil tycoon from Denver, I think, and decided that he didn't want to do a record label in the 20th century. So the record got released, but never came out, never did the album. The other band broke up. So here I was again in the 80s, 82, from having 2 bands I'm going to have, a great career with, solo, and then my trio, which I loved, to nothing again. And I didn't really know what to do. And when I was cutting Be My Baby, there was Patrick McDonald was the engineer. And he asked me if I'd ever considered doing commercials. I said I never even thought about it. My commercials were kind of lame, and Mitch Miller was doing that kind of really dorky kind of jingly stuff. And he goes, well, things have changed, and there's this new hot company from Seattle that just moved to LA, and I think maybe you ought to hit them up, and because they're always looking for new singers. So I wrote a letter to them back before email, and had a cassette and sent it to him. Well, turns out the contact guy was Jim Brado. Turns out he was a huge Batdorf Rodney fan. Snuck into one of our gigs in Ohio years ago. And so that was my introduction to studio singing, which I'd always hoped that there'd be some way I could sing and make money if I didn't have a record deal. Well, finally it started. And so I started doing that must have been 83 maybe. And kind of went on from there. I started getting on some big commercials. Had a big campaign for Nissan, which bought our house in LA. Sang on records, got to sing Mötley Crüe, Theater of Pain album. Me and Max Gornethal sang all the backgrounds on that record. And Donna Summer, it was, there was just tons of stuff. That was just kind of my gig then. And that went on for about 10 years. And then the jingle singing thing kind of dried up. I don't know if you remember, but Budweiser came out with an ad, and they were the big jingle guys. They had all these huge jingles for beer. And they came out with a jingle that had no music. It was a frog, animated thing. So everybody jumped on the bandwagon. They wanted their commercials to be like that. So jingles were dead. So I thought, okay, now what?